네, 여러분들이 아마 그 지난 이틀 동안의 워크숍에 참여하신 분들은 우리 지금 한국의 청소년들의 상황이 어떤 지금 뭐 상황인지 또 어떤 상태인지 이런 거에 대해서, 그리고 가장 큰 문제가 뭔지 이런 거에 대해서도 어느 정도 아이디어를 가졌을 거라고 생각이 듭니다. 그래서 이제 또 거기에 관련돼서 국내외 많은 연사분들의 강연과 대화를 통해 가지고 또 다양한 관점에서 어떻게 청소년들의 문제를 돕고 또 우리가 어떤 그 계획을 할 수 있는지에 대해서도 아마 들으셨을 거라고 짐작해 갑니다. 네, 이번 시간에는 우리 카렌 박사님 통해 가지고 자기연민 마인드풀 셀프 컴패션이 프로그램이 뭔지, 자기연민이 뭔지, 그리고 또 이 자기연민이 이러한 청소년의 어떤 심각한 또 청소년이 당면하고 있는 이런 문제들을 자기연민이 어떻게 도울 수 있는지, 그리고 또 구체적인 또 자기연민이 또 방금 카렌 박사 조금 언급했었습니다만 또 어떻게 효과가 있는지 이런 부분에 대해서 전체적으로 한번 짧게 강연을 들어보도록 하겠습니다.
Thank you. Yes, so MSC stands for Mindful Self-Compassion. And Mindful Self-Compassion is actually the adult program, which is 8 sessions long and meets for 2.5 hours a week for 8 sessions. And the purpose of that program is to cultivate self-compassion. It has a foundation of mindfulness, so there's mindfulness in it, and mindfulness is an important part of it. But the main focus of the adult program is to cultivate self-compassion. And so self-compassion has 3 different parts to it, 3 different components. We call them components. And the first component is mindfulness. So there's a mindfulness foundation. And here what mindfulness means is a little bit different than the traditional definition of mindfulness. What it means is having a sense of balanced awareness and to have perspective, have balanced perspective on a situation. And so the second component of self-compassion is common humanity. And common humanity is the understanding that whatever we are experiencing when we're suffering, when we're struggling, or when we're in a difficult, challenging situation, whatever emotions we're experiencing, like anger or anxiety or disappointment or frustration, this is a common experience that people feel, that all human beings feel, that all human beings experience, and that in fact it's defines us as human beings. It's part of the human experience. And then the third component of self-compassion is self-kindness. So this is taking an active step, an active doing something actively to actually be kind to yourself. And it's the kind of thing that you might do for a good friend who is struggling, who is having a hard time. You would think nothing of saying some kind words to them, or maybe giving them a hug or doing something nice for them. We generally don't do those kinds of things for ourselves. And the reason we don't really is that it's not in our culture. We're not raised to do that. We consider that selfish or self-centered or self-indulgent. So we don't readily take time to be nice to ourselves the way we are to our good friends when they're having a hard time. If I could just add one more thing. So what I've just given is the formal definition of self-compassion, that it has these 3 different components. But there's also an informal definition of self-compassion, and that's treating yourself when you're having a hard time, treating yourself the way you would treat a good friend. And we know that 80% of people don't do that. 80% of people are kinder to their friends than they are to themselves.
Thank you, Karen. 지금 이제 우리가 그 자기 연민의 3가지 요소로 마음챙김, 자기 친절, 또 보편적 인간 경험에 대해서 지금 그 자기연민의 정의를 또 설명과 함께 잠깐 들었는데요. 자, 이 자기연민이라고 하는 이런 걸 기반으로 해서 또 청소년을 위해서 특별한 프로그램을 또 개발하고 그 청소년들의 어떤 그 힘겨움, 청소년들이 당면하고 있는 여러 가지 문제에 그를 안고 있는 그런 청소년들 대상으로 이 프로그램을 이제 적용을 해서 실시를 했을 때 어떤 긍정적인 효과들이 있었는지 그것에 대해서도 잠깐 여쭤볼까요?
Yeah, so what we've seen is when we teach this program to teens, what we see is a decrease in anxiety, depression, stress. And as I said earlier, in our most recent study, we've seen, and this is the first time that we measured it, decreases in these factors that are related to suicide. We'll be doing another study. Actually, we're just starting one right now, which is going to be measuring suicide ideation, suicidal thoughts. So we'll know a little bit more about that. That study actually is funded by the American Foundation for Suicide Prevention. So we know that there's also an increase in self-compassion, of course, and an increase in mindfulness, and an increase in resilience and life satisfaction.
이제 이런 청소년들의 이런 문제들이 많이 이제 있는데 과연 우리가 청소년을 위해서 어른인 우리가 청소년에게 어떤 도움을 줄 수 있을까? 우리가 청소년들을 위해서 할 수 있는 게 뭐가 있을까? 이거에 대해서도 한번 카렌 박사님한테 한번 물어보겠습니다.
It's a good question, yeah. So I think the best thing that we can do is to be self-compassionate ourselves, because we are models for our teens. And although often it may look like they're not watching us and that, you know, they're with their friends and they're, you know, not observing us the way that they used to when they were younger, they are, you know, we know that teens really look at the adults around them for guidance and for leads and how to be. So when we as adults are being self-compassionate and we're modeling that kind of behavior, we're modeling self-compassion, then they'll learn to be more self-compassionate themselves. And I really think that is the best thing that we can do, that they learn from us, you know, they learn from us. And so when we learn to be self-compassionate as adults, then I think that's the best thing that we can do to help teens.
땡큐 카렌. 카렌이 박사님이 대답을 들으니까 제가 방금 일어나는 생각은 카렌도 이제 그 자녀가 있는데 딸이 있는 걸로 알고 있고요. 또 카렌 박사님 또 교수님 되기 전에 학교에서 청소년들을 지도했던 선생님 경력이 또 있고, 그래서 아마 그런 개인적인 그런 경험들이 지금의 이런 말을 하는데 영향을 미치지 않는가 생각이 드는데, 한번 카렌 박사님한테 한번 다시 질문해 보겠습니다. 어떤지.
I learned a lot as a parent and also as a school teacher. I think as a school teacher, I really learned, I think the most important thing I learned that helps me now teaching self-compassion to teens is to listen. That teens really want to be heard. More than anything, they want to be heard. And it can be hard for us as adults because we have certain wisdom that we've gathered from being on this planet for longer than they have been here. And so we're anxious to share it with them. We want to help them, and we're anxious to share our wisdom with them. But really, they want to be heard more than anything. So one thing I learned from being a school teacher was to really listen to teens, you know, to really let them speak and just really listen and hear what they have to say. As a parent, my children are now, I have two daughters, they're 27 and 29. I'm still learning. They are my best teachers. I can say that I wish I knew then, when I was raising my children, what I know now about self-compassion, because I think it would have helped me a lot as a parent. But it's never too late, and my children are they are very grounded, and I think they are learning about mindfulness and self-compassion. And I think as a parent, you have to be careful not to, as much as you enjoy and as much as you believe in mindfulness and self-compassion, you have to be careful not to push it on your children too much. So that's my what I'm always learning.
네, 감사합니다. 진짜 우리 지금 여기 참가하시고 계시는 분들, 저를 포함해서 또 누군가를 지도하거나 선생님의 입장에 있는 분들, 또 부모 입장에, 선배 입장에 있는 분들에게는 굉장히 와닿는 아주 실질적인 경험이고 좋은 팁인 것 같아요. 감사합니다. 컨퍼런스 참여자분 질문 중에 첫 번째 질문인데요. 성인들을 대상으로 한 일반 MSC에 비해 청소년을 위한 MSC는 어떤 점이 다른가요? 어떤 추가 고려 사항들이 있나요? 질문입니다.
Yeah, and in fact, I teach mindful self-compassion for adults also. I'm a certified mindful self-compassion teacher for adults. So I'm very familiar with that program. Yes, so the program for teens is developmentally appropriate, meaning that we do more hands-on activities. There's art in every, at the beginning of every session, for example. There's a music meditation. There is less reflection. There's less didactic material and less reflection and more activities. So the teens are more involved in the back and forth of the exercises. So less reflection, less didactic material. There's movement in every session also, because it's hard for teens to sit for 90 minutes, and each session is 90 minutes long. So we have some movement. And by the way, we've also been teaching this virtually online through Zoom since the beginning of the pandemic. And we've made some adjustments, some changes, but to make it work online. But it seems to work really well. And in fact, the last study that I was talking about that we just did was all online, and it worked.
고맙습니다. 지금 카렌 박사님 이야기에서 우리 그 온라인으로나 또 지금 현장에 참가하고 계신 분들 중에서 혹시 명상 프로그램을 개발하거나 아니면 뭔가 또 다른 꼭 명상이 아니더라도 뭔가를 지도하려고 했을 때 굉장히 중요한 핵심 팁이 하나 나왔는데요. 그 자기연민의 그 어떤 세 가지 핵심 또는 그 외에 여러 가지 그 주고자 하는 그리고 지도하고자 하는 그 내용에 대해서 정확하게 이해하는 게 물론 먼저고요. 그런 다음에는 그걸 누구에게 가르치냐 하는 거죠. 그러니까 그 포커스가 가르치는 선생도 아니요, 가르치는 내용도 아니요. 물론 그 내용 중요한데 그거에 대해서 충분히 이해가 됐으면 가르치는 그 대상에게 가장 맞게 적합하게 그걸 응용을 해야 된다는 거죠. 그들이 좋아하는 방식, 그들의 언어, 그들의 취향, 그들의 소통 방식 이런 쪽으로 전부 다 바꾸어서 훨씬 더 쉽게 그리고 잘 이해하게, 한마디로 이것 또한 굉장한 친절이에요. 그래서 그러한 방식으로 여러 가지 많이 응용하고 적용했다. 그래서 지금도 이 MSC 프로그램은 청소년 대상뿐만 아니라 성인 프로그램도 계속 그 ongoing changing, 계속 업그레이드하고 바뀌고 하는 이유는, 왜냐하면 우리 사람들 자체가 상황이 바뀌고 요구가 달라지고 필요가 달라지기 때문에 거기에 따라서 계속해서 진전되고 진화되고 발전되고 있거든요. 그래서 아마 우리가 이 부분은 좀 많이 참고할 필요가 있지 않냐. 고정되지 않고 계속해서 우리의 도움을 받는 대상들, 청소년들, 학생들한테 그렇게 계속 연구하고 그들에게 맞게 해야 될 필요가 있다는 그런 이야기를 한 것 같습니다. 감사합니다.